I have another question. I know Ms. DeNoble shares the same question on the tourism expenditure. So do you?
Yeah, I can take that. Just a little backstory on this. August 22nd, Mayor Fox wanted to have the Latin Fest again, like there's been many previous years. Last year, they used a promoter called Willie Will, and they wanted to use them again. It was a cost of $6,900. So the tourism had a quick meeting August 28th, and they thought it was too short notice, too expensive, $6,900. They favored hiring a local band like they did in previous years with a local salsa instructor for approximately $1,200. And they prefer having it during the actual Hispanic Heritage Month, which started September 15th. And despite all that, Mayor Fox single-handedly overrode the commission's decision and went ahead and booked them. And as far as the money being dispersed, according to our ordinance, the commission shall have exclusive authority to disperse all revenues allocated to the fund. So only the commission can disperse funds, not the mayor or the municipal decision, like he said before. So I let him know that I sent an email. I said, you've broken the laws of the borough, you intentionally overrode the commission's authority and knowingly violated our ordinances. And I let him know that please notify the promoter. I will not approve this reckless expenditure when it appears on the bills list like it has today. And the mayor said, please do not, Councilwoman, please do not threaten me. We need to revisit the ordinance, and there's a number of areas that are not being followed appropriately. And I just let them know, to be clear, I did not threaten you. I just merely pointed out your violation and disregard of our ordinances. The event is not sanctioned by the Tourism Commission, and no funds should be removed from the Tourism Trust to pay for this event. So I would like this taken off the bill list because it wasn't a threat, and I am doing it.
Well, there's any number of, and I don't want to get into a whole political conversation on this because, you know,
I'm just saying
we have
until the ordinance
excuse me,
is changed, we do have to follow it. What if we do change it?
The ordinance needs to be looked at and followed. I would suggest, Councilwoman, that part of following the ordinance is noticing a meeting, and if you don't notice a meeting and you make decisions in that meeting, basically those decisions are void.
The meeting was noticed 48 hours in advance. It was a special meeting and there was a quorum present.
I think there needs to be more than a 48-hour notice, number one. Number two, even the people that voted on that in that meeting, you can't have a substitute show up for one of the 3 or 4 commission people. So, I mean, we can go back and forth and up and down on this.
Even with the substitute,
Excuse me, I'm trying to talk here. We had a very successful year plus of upgrading our events. We're going to continue to upgrade our events because we're getting nothing but positive feedback from the businesses in town and the residents on the events. So unfortunately, we have a difference of opinion on this, and we do need to revisit the ordinance. Greg's already looked at the ordinance, Mr. Fehrenbach, and found some holes in it that we need to shore up. So we will be doing that.
I'd like to say on this same topic that the beyond this concern I have about the mayor, maybe not, it seems like overriding the commission. I have a concern about the fact that dollars are being spent out of a trust. And those dollars are supposed to be governed, managed, whatever the word, by this commission. And this commission made specific recommendations to use different entertainment that was local, Latino, local entertainment. And they said to spend closer, something under $2,000 compared to this $6,900. Collectively, this borough has a fiduciary responsibility to manage the dollars in that trust. And this commission is charged with that responsibility. No one, not me, not Mr. Fehrenbach, not the mayor, no one should be overriding that responsibility. So I actually do have almost a legal concern with what transpired on this particular event. And I also am not prepared when we do vote to approve this particular line item.
Okay, so if somebody want to make a motion on consent agenda?
Just a clarifying question, just for our edification. what are potential consequences if we don't pay bills for services that have already been rendered? And likewise, if like, say this were to get removed from the tourism trust and be moved over to the general fund, how would that impact our budget this year?
Okay, let me try to answer that first, and Mr. Cannon may need to correct me. In the event that a vendor has received a bona fide request from a municipal official to provide a service, and that party provided the service, the municipality is bound and required to pay that bill in order to meet its contractual obligation. In the event the municipality chooses not to make that payment and causes the vendor to have to engage an attorney to be able to pursue those funds, the municipality could potentially be responsible for those attorney fees in addition to the payment for what needs to be done. There's a context that I think needs to be understood. When I first arrived, and I know some of you realize that I don't have much interest in any of these events that take place, so it's not like I'm speaking from having some skin in the game. Latin Fest, Mediterranean Fest, Park Fest, a variety of items in March were on a schedule. They weren't just on a schedule. There had been contacts made, coordination with vendors, performers, etc. Latin Fest, as a specific example, had a commitment back to March or April to have it take place on this date by this vendor. There was a suggestion that maybe it should be canceled. There were some concerns about what things could or could not be canceled. There were 2 concerts that were scheduled on Sundays, one at the end of August, one at the beginning of September, that were canceled. And they were canceled because we did not have any contractual obligation to continue to use those parties. And so those could be canceled, and those were monies that were not spent from tourism. What took place for Latin Fest, as I understand it, was a trimmed down version of what was originally planned, in order to be able to reduce what the originally planned cost for that event was going to be. So there were attempts to be able to reduce what was taking place. But I think everybody needs to see it in that context. Regarding your question that I provided an answer on earlier, possibly Mr. Cannon would like to correct me or make some comment regarding that.
That's accurate. I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
So I have a
I didn't
question.
hear what you said, Greg, I'm sorry.
What he said is accurate. I don't have anything to add or correct.
So, Mr.
You've
Cannon,
been doing this longer than me, so.
I do have a legal question for you then. Mr. Fehrenbach just highlighted appropriately that, there is a contractual obligation that some official of the borough committed us to back in March. Although, just as an aside, I was told, and perhaps erroneously, that there was no contract signed at the time this issue arose. So I don't know if that's true or not, Mr. Fehrenbach, but
When I mentioned March, I was talking about the tourism events. I was not talking about the Bellic issue.
oh, I'm talking about Latin Fest.
Oh, Latin Fest, yeah, there was at least an agreement, if not a signed document, that existed in March, early April.
And there may have been an agreement, but I was at least informed that we did not have a signed contract. But my question for you, Mr. Cannon, we're kind of faced with a dilemma that Councilwoman Meredith DeMarco raised, Council President. That, so what happens? We could get sued if we don't pay our bills. But the alternative that's putting us in this position is some official of representing the borough of Bradley Beach is making commitments to spend dollars from a trust, a legal entity.
Which has been the case for years, by the way.
So it's, as long as we've been doing it wrong for years.
No, I'm not saying it's being done wrong. I'm saying that has been the process for years.
I'm saying it's being done wrong, sir.
Okay.
And I'm saying, well, we have a duly formed commission authorized by borough ordinance that says they make that call. And they did not make that call, sir. And I'm trying to understand from Mr. Cannon, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if we don't pay this, and I can understand it's not the vendor's fault that we have these challenges. So if we do have to pay them, what other recourse do we have for the fact that this borough is disregarding this somewhere in this administration? We are disregarding our own ordinances, creating these conflicts that should not exist legally. What are we faced with? We're spending money from a trust. We're authorizing it. That should not be done. And by the way, this is one example. There are many examples being money funneling through that trust that are not related to tourism. So I need to understand.
Like what?
Like the 130-year anniversary. That is not a tourism event. That was a resident event.
No money came out of tourism.
We sat at, Mr. Mayor, we sat up here in front of this audience, in front of a similar audience.
I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
So my only point is, I'm not trying to.
We made a contribution, I think that, I don't have it in front of me, but it was like a $5,000 contribution out of tourism. That's correct.
Yeah, and others donated money, revenue that came into the trust that shouldn't have, because it was not a tourism event. And we even talked here in public about the fact that we quote unquote broke even on that particular event. And the whole time I was sitting here thinking, it shouldn't have been flowing through the tourism trust. So there is I believe, a violation of law here. And I'm not trying to get us into details. I am trying to say, we got to stop this, just as some residents have said tonight, just as the council's been saying for a pretty long time. We reduced the bid threshold to $4,000 for professional service firms because this administration has been paying $17,000, $20,000, $5,000, $8,000. Too much money when it wasn't necessary. So here we're faced with the black and white of we have to authorize payment. I don't want to do it. I feel like I'm going to be obligated to do it on behalf of the borough to avoid a lawsuit, to avoid penalties or whatever. But how do we make this stop? How do we make the unauthorized use of trust funds stop? And that's a question really for Mr. Cannon.
I mean, you have to speak to the CFO of the town. This is CFO's responsibility. I see what you're saying. Look, let me just say this. I don't know what the facts of this are. I haven't seen the doc. I know that you guys are all versed in this. So I don't know where the money's coming from, who got it. I'm certainly not keeping track over here. But you have an ordinance that says that the commission has the exclusive authority to disperse all the revenues, which is essentially the $75 fees. And so I would take it that Mr. Faraback will be speaking with the CFO. I don't know what other recourse you're looking for.
The commission has the authority, exclusive authority.
That's what the ordinance says, and like I said, I don't know what's spent where, but let's just assume
No, you don't, but
that someone authorized it other than the commission. Well, number one, I don't know who's on the commission or if it meets or if that's being.
Well, that is one issue that
There's
has.
clearly a disconnect here.
Yeah.
I mean, not even knowing all the facts, I can see that something isn't working properly.
No,
I don't know if it's the
we said that we
commission,
need
the
to take another-
disbursements.
we said we need to take another look at this ordinance and this commission, and we are in the process of doing that.
It's the way.
Yeah, water, please. Really?
Greg, clearly I understand you're not close to the details.
Well, if you look at our tourism in the last 2 years, 2021, 22, tourism didn't hold a meeting in 22.
There was a pandemic.
That's my point. I was going there. We had a pandemic. Now, we had a pandemic, but we also ran meetings on Zoom, had ways of doing that. Tourism did not do that. Tourism, I met with tourism in 2021. We had a brief, I want to say it was a 15-minute quote annual meeting. Was there an annual meeting for 2022? I don't think so. Was there an annual meeting for 2023? I don't think so. So there wasn't a lot of activity going on with tourism. We did use internal resources in the administration, Michelle Wiley, who actually picked that up as part of her responsibilities, some tourism responsibilities in the context of events. And I think we've been very successful with that. Do we need to clean up this ordinance, look at how it is laid out and how we execute against it? Absolutely. How many trusts do we have? 30 or something? Is that right?
Something in the order.
Something. So if we want to look at trusts and say, let's bring the CFO and look at each trust and say, how is it being dispersed? We should do that.
That's by law, we have to do that.
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
We have to.
No, I know, and they do that, and it's part of the audit. No, I'm saying in the context of how what's the approval process, how we do that, because you're expressing a desire to get involved in the approval of those trust monies.
I'm expressing a desire that we manage those trust monies legally. And I fear that we are not doing that. I fear that there's a mindset, and I've probably been guilty of it myself, not with trust, but with the beach utility as an example. But there's a mindset that people go through and they say, oh, that's getting paid out of the beach utility, then it's okay. Because why? If it's paid out of the current fund, your taxes might go up. If we can put things in the beach utility or the sewer utility, we help manage your taxes. So in general, if it's appropriate, that's a good thing to do. We want to allocate dollars to the beach utility, to the sewer utility, if it's appropriate. But it bothers me when the reaction of the administration is often, oh, don't worry about that, Councilman. That's getting paid out of the beach utility.
No, nobody's ever said that.
Okay,
Nor we treat every dollar equally, whether it's beach utility or trusts or the current fund or the sewer fund. We have a responsibility to do that, and we do that. So
as recently as the last few meetings, we've said, oh, that's getting that, can that get paid out of the beach utility? Can that get paid out of sewer? And a lot of times the answer is yes, don't worry about it, without regard to, does it fit?
I don't recall any of that. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's fine. My point being here, trusts are sacred animals. That's why you set them up to begin with. You do not commingle dollars. And we collectively, this borough of Bradley Beach, would be liable for misuse of trust funds. And I fear that our auditor, I'm planning to very specifically ask our auditor to review this. Mr. Fehrenbach can tell you, I have had exchanges with Mr. Fehrenbach to say, help me reconcile what I'm seeing in our annual statements for the trust, tourism trust, to what I'm seeing in Edmonds. And I have not yet been able to accomplish that reconciliation. I'm sure someone can, but based on the correspondence that we've exchanged, we were still off by $9,000 or $10,000 on a base of 60 or 70. So it was not an insignificant difference.
So the last communication to you by Mr. Clinton had the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023, I think the beginning of 2022, all in sync between Edmonds and the AFS, which will end up being the audit.
I need to revisit that because I recall seeing that same correspondence and I don't recall that the balance is reconciled. So I may be wrong, but even that took me multiple exchanges of emails to get to that response. And my recollection is that he had still not answered my question. So my point being, we're sitting here saying, the mayor's saying, we got to look at the ordinance, we got to revisit it. All the while, though, the mayor is making decisions on how to spend money out of that trust, or maybe not the mayor. No, maybe it's Michelle Wiley, maybe it's the prior business administrator, maybe it's you, Mr. Fairbank. I don't know. But no one should be making those decisions except the commission. And if the commission was a meeting, that somebody in the administration should have said, hello, commission. You've got to be meeting. This is a town authorized commission.
Yes, and when I was liaison in 2021, I asked for an annual meeting and got it. In 2022, our liaison for the tourism group was Councilman Bennell. In 2023, that liaison is Councilwoman. Bennell. In 2023, it's Councilwoman Bennell.
And I applaud Ms. DeNoble because she's at least been trying to get this squared away and straightened out. And my sense of my conversations with her is she just keeps running into brick walls. So it's very frustrating as we try to serve the public. When we cannot get answers. The answers sound like we have to revisit the ordinance. Meanwhile, we're flagrantly ignoring the ordinance with every authorization made.
Okay, do we want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
No,
I would like to make a motion to approve the bill list with the exception of the item on page 11 to Maren Bellick for the public relations consultant, and also with the exception of the item on page 19. I can't read the name of the vendor, but what we've been talking about, the $6,900 for the Latin Fest.
Okay,
That is
that's your motion.
Yes, it is.
Is somebody to second that motion?
You guys
John, you just,
made a motion.
or just taking out the one item, the 17,000.
Well, I said take out 2 items,
Oh, you did. I didn't hear the second. Thank you.
and so I don't know where you are.
Second,
Ms. Marco?
Yes.
Ms. DeNoble?
yes.
Mr. Gubitosi?
Yes,
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
No. Okay, let's move to the next set of and I guess I should qualify my note here. I think there is a rationale. We're going to explain that on Ms. Bellick. She did the work for us in 2022 and did it very effectively. And we have an obligation to pay our vendors, whether we agree or disagree on what that looks like in the context of local or somebody outside or whatever. So that's my vote of no.